This morning, we're going to continue our study in Numbers chapter 20. I'm not going to go back to the overheads and go back through all that it covers, but it's rich in history and events that's happening as the children of Israel approach and get ready to take the promised land. We talked last week about some notable events in Numbers chapter 20. We find right off the bat, Numbers chapter 20 and verse 1 makes a statement that Miriam died. Miriam has passed away, and of course in our presentation we did an overview of her life and who she was and about her and the importance that she had in the children of Israel. Also in this chapter we find the event where God told Moses to speak to the rock to bring forth water, and he struck the rock twice. And it did bring forth water, but there was punishment given now to both Moses and Aaron that they would not go over into the promised land. And so we find that these events are starting to wrap it up pretty quickly as they begun their conquest of the promised land. Now, one of the things we want to notice about Numbers is it's going to give us kind of a general overview of them starting to go in and take the promised land. When we get into the book of Deuteronomy and the book of Joshua, we're going to get more detail, okay? So just remember, because it looks like things are happening pretty rapidly, there are some other things behind the scenes that's going on. And like I say, this is a kind of a quick overview, a quick snapshot that Moses wrote here about this. One of the things that I want to do this morning before we get into the body, operator here again, Greg, guess what? Got our own switch. All right, it is this. I want to kind of do an overview because we're going to start seeing the land of the Amalekites, the Edomites, the Moabites, all these other nights that's going on here. So what I want to do is, and especially as we get into Numbers 21, 22, and 23, you're going to see talk about a lot of towns and villages that they're going to go through, the location of these. And I don't want to get bogged down too much in that because it's quite a few of them. But I do want us to get a picture or a snapshot of how they're moving here, where they're going, and what it's going to look like. And we'll refer back to some of these maps and information as other lessons unfold. But this morning, what I want us to do, and I hope you can see this, this is the old land of Canaan, okay? And what I want to do, and I might step away from the camera for a minute because we are live this morning, over here to show you what's going on. Here in this old world, the children of Israel now are camped down here in this location here around Kadesh Barnea, okay? We know they took it on themselves to try to go up here and attack Amalek and were defeated, okay? So they're camped back down here, and this is the country of the Amalekites. This is the country of the Edomites, the Moabites. Right here we have the Dead Sea. This is the country of Sihon that we're going to be talking about later on. There's Amnon here. And within here, this Canaanite location on the west side of Jordan, you have the Hittites, Perizzites, and all those others located here. And so what we're going to see as they go in and begin to take this country, they're going to come in from the east side. And this is what it's going to look like in the end. Okay? Once they finally conquer it, this area down here in this green is going to be the land of Judah. There's Simeon, Dan, Ephraim. Now Manasseh is going to have a land inheritance on both sides because their tribe is so big. On the east of Jordan and the west of Jordan, there's Naphtali, Zebulun, Issachar, Gad, okay? And of course Benjamin is going to be here in this little blue. And in the end, there's only going to be two tribes left once the 10 tribes are carried off into captivity. And of course that's going to be Judah and Benjamin, okay? And so this is what this is where it's at now. This is what it looks like now with all these different tribes in here. This is what it's going to look like after the conquest. And the reason I show this is because you're going to see a lot of movement start And I don't really want to get bogged down too much in that location, this location, and that location, and things like that. So this is what it looks like currently. This is what it's going to look like in the future. And maybe on some of this, as I say, we'll go back to it and take a look at it. So who are these people? I thought we would go over that as a refresher because we're going to see these people mentioned over and over in this land of Canaan generically, okay? Generally, the land of Canaan is thought of that area there located to west of Jordan, as we saw, where you got the Perizzites, the Hittites, and all those other people, okay? So who are these people? Let's go back and do a refresher. I know we've kind of gone through this when we went through the book of Exodus and Leviticus and things of that nature, but we're going to see a lot of mentioning of these different people. So who are they? Where do they come from? What about them? Okay? The Amalekites. Amalek, remember we showed the Amalek country there, the left of Edom, going up there toward the Dead Sea, going over toward the Mediterranean Sea, that area down in here that they had hard-headedly went up there after Moses, God had told Moses and Aaron, don't you go up there with them people, let them go up there. They got defeated, got pushed back down. Anyway, Amalek is a biblical figure representing both a nation and a nomadic tribe. They are considered the foremost adversary of ancient Israel and are depicted as having assaulted the Israelites during their escape from Egypt. Remember, there were those that attacked Israel from behind. That's who that is. And God didn't forget that, okay? God did not forget what went on with Amalek and Israel coming out of Egypt. And so, he's going to rain down judgment on them in the future, okay? The Amalekites are descendants of Amalek. Who is Amalek? He is the son of Esau's son, Eliphaz. So these are descendants of Esau, okay? Through Esau's children, through Esau's lineage. They were the first nation to attack the Jewish people after the Exodus from Egypt. That's who we're talking about. And you're going to find that quite a few of these people are descendants of Esau and also of Cain, okay? And we'll get to that in just a minute, okay? Edom now was a biblical empire. They were primarily related to Esau and his offspring. The Edomites were connected to Israel through Jacob, the father of the brothers Jacob and Esau. So here again, one of the children of Esau are who these people are, who the Edomites are, who the Amalekites are, okay? Matter of fact, I believe it's going to be mentioned when we get over to Numbers chapter 22 that when Moses entreats the king of Edom about going through that land peacefully, and of course the king of Edom is going to deny him passage, and they got to go all the way back around toward the Red Sea and go. Anyway, we'll get to that in a little bit. We be brothers. How can they make that statement? Well, they're all kinfolks, okay? I mean, that's the bottom line. I mean, they are descendants of two brothers, Jacob and Esau, okay? And we're going to see Cain's folks come into play in this in just a little bit. Moab, here we go. Moab now, the Moabites, who are they? The land of Moab. They are descendants from Lot, Abraham's nephew, through incestual union with his two daughters. Remember that? Remember when Lot, his wife, and two daughters got out of Sodom and Gomorrah? And his wife turned to a pillar of salt, and the two daughters got their father drunk, and they had children by them. One set of that tribe became the Moabites, okay? The son of the youngest daughter was named Ammon. Okay, we saw the country of Ammon. He's the father of the Amorites. So where do they come from? Who are their descendants? Where is their lineage from? okay, from Lot, okay? The son of the oldest daughter was named Moab, the father of the Moabites. These two half-brothers would become two powerful nations, okay? And we're going to see that. I want to pause right here for just a second. I've been talking 90 to nothing. I didn't want to get too bogged down into this, but I thought it was worthwhile because we're going to see a lot of these names over and over again on this conquest, okay? So I thought it was a good idea that we refresh ourselves with who these people are, okay? Here again, they're kinfolks. Any of you brethren have any comment or question on that so far? I know this is a biblical history lesson, Daniel, but I think it's worthwhile because we're going to start seeing how this all going to interact, okay? Now, we saw Sion, the country of kingdom of Sion. We don't hear a lot about it, but it's there. It's going to come into play too, okay? Sion was the Amorite king of Heshbon. He ruled a region east of the Jordan River, controlling key trade routes and fortification. His defiance against Israel marked a pivotal event in their journey. So he was one of the Amorite kings. The Amorites, okay. Noah's three sons. One of the three sons, Ham, fathered Cush, Egypt, Put, and Canaan. Okay? And generally that area over there, like I say, west of the Jordan, in the area around the Dead Sea and all is referred to the land of Canaanites. Okay, the land of Canaan. The sons of Canaan were Sidon and Heth, Genesis 10:15. The Bible continues in Genesis 10:16 through 18 to say Canaan also fathered the Jebusites. You're going to see them come into play. The Gergesites, the Hivites, the Arkites, the Sionites, the Arvites. Remember that little corner of the map over there that I said that was in kind of a light blue and you got all these Hivites and all like that in there? That's these people, okay? This is who their descendants are. Afterwards, the clan of the Canaanites dispersed. So later on, you're going to see a dispersation as conquest goes on of these tribes. But that's who they are, the sons of Canaan. That's their descendants. Well, who was Canaan? Well, he was one of the three sons of Ham. You see how all this is interwoven? So here again, what you still got in a physical sense, they are kinfolks. In reality, they're all brothers and sisters, aren't they? I mean, really. So this is what you got. Now, you've seen that country up there, Bashan, and it had a little thing up there that said Og up in the northeast corner of the map. Og was king of Bashan. He was a mighty and infamous Amorite king in the days of Moses who fought the Israelites on their way to the promised land. Here again, remember, he's one of Ham's descendants, okay? So that's where these people are coming from. And so there's what we got. The before and after of those conquests, okay? What this map is here, and I wish I had a bigger screen. You can look it up. It's a map on the Exodus from Egypt. We're also going to get into, as we get into these different kingdoms, like, you know, we got Edom here that was showed, Moab here, you go on up here, you got the kingdom of Og. Down here you got the Amalekites. And this is going to kind of be the way of travel. This is Kadesh Barnea here. This is the wilderness of Sin. There's Mount Hor as they start going over into the promised land. And it's going to be, like I say, there's a lot of little towns and kingdoms, sub-kingdoms that's going to make this area up. In the end, as they do their conquest on the west side, in the end they're going to cross over here at Jericho. That's primarily where they're headed, is to the west side. Okay? This is what we're going to pick up about Joshua and his conquest and things like that when we get to that point. To give you kind of a point, Mount Big Sky, Mount Nebo, is right here on the east side, okay? So, now like I say, we'll come back to some of that. I wish I had a bigger screen so you could see that better, but, this is what we're talking about. This is the area, this is the people that you're reading about here. Okay. So we left off at verse 14, Numbers chapter 20, encounter with Edom, the Edomites, okay? Who are they the descendants of? Esau, okay? So here's the encounter with them. Morgan, do you have Numbers chapter 20, verse 14?
Just verse 14?
Yeah, verse 14. Go ahead and read through 21.
Now Moses sent messengers from Kadesh to the king of Edom. Thus says your brother Israel, you know all the hardship that has befallen us, how our fathers went down to Egypt, and we dwelt in Egypt a long time. And the Egyptians afflicted us and our fathers. When we cried out to the Lord, he heard our voice and sent the angel and brought us up out of Egypt. And here we are in Kadesh, a city on the edge of your border. Please let us pass through your country. We will not pass through fields or vineyards, nor will we drink water from wells. We will go along the king's highway. We will not turn aside to the right hand or to the left until we have passed through your territory. Then Edom said to him, you shall not pass through my land, lest I come out against you with the sword. So the children of Israel said to him, we will go by the highway, and if I or my livestock drink any of your water, then I will pay for it. Let me only pass through on foot, nothing more. Then he said, you shall not pass through. So Edom came out against them with many men and with a strong hand. Thus Edom refused to give Israel passage through his territory, so Israel turned away from him.
Okay, there's a narrative that we briefly mentioned about Moses. Now, he sends out a request. He's well aware of who these people are, okay? And notice how aware he is, because he refers to them as my brother, okay? So it's not unknown to him at who these people are. And so he sends out a diplomatic request, and we see things like that done today. And he asks the king for passage. We're not going to do any harm. We just want to pass through. We recognize that you're a part of the family, okay, so to speak. We're not going to be, taking any of your water, any of your cattle, any of your food, or anything like that. We've had a rough journey from Egypt, in which, if you go back and look, Edom was well aware of that, okay? This thing was not done in the closet, okay? And he was well aware of what had gone on out there in the desert with Israel. And they have had a rough journey so far. And, we don't want to go to war over this thing, so just let us pass through peacefully, and we'll take care of business and move on. What does the king of Edom say? Nope. You're not coming through here. You wonder how much of this, when you look back historically, how much of this leads back to Jacob and Esau, really, There are some old wounds here that has gone on for centuries now that have not healed, okay? And you just have to ask yourself that question, even though Moses was being very diplomatic about it. The Edomites were like, I don't think so. And so we find that, he asked him a couple of times, and the king of Edom was serious about it, because in verse 20, what did he say? He sent out a much strong army, didn't he? He said, you're not coming through here. So he set up a blockade, didn't he? And so we find what's going to happen is they're going to have to reroute, and we showed those squiggly line arrows on the other map. Well, this was one of them when they were headed this way, and now they got to turn around and go this way, go back toward the area of the Amalekites again, and come around. Now, what they're going to follow, there is a highway through there. A highway back then was a passageway. It's a trade route between these countries, okay? So what they're going to do is go back and try to grab the area of the trade route and go around and through by the Amalekites and the Edomites is what they're going to try to do, okay? And, of course, they're going to start grumbling and complaining, and we probably won't have time to get to that about that. So Any of you brethren have any comments or questions on Edom refusing passage for the children of Israel? You know, to me, what's amazing about all this is a lot of times we talk about the Exodus and the wandering and the conquest. There's a whole lot that went on behind the scenes of that, wasn't there? That we don't even think about, we don't even know about, you know. Even now, it's not an easy thing, is it, to go in there and do that conquest. You know, there's obstacles facing them, isn't it? These people are not going to go down easy, are they? You know? So it just shows that you're going to have to be pretty determined to obtain what God's promised you. Now, maybe a shadow of that today would be this. Are there obstacles that we face today? And we know that these people were the church in the wilderness, as they're referred to. Are there obstacles that we face today on our march to heaven the devil sets up? Are there going to be those that do not allow us passage or do not want to allow us passage? Sometimes we just have to go around and do it the hard way, don't we? Okay? But that's what makes it worthwhile. You know, and it's kind of the old adage, Bobby, is, you know, if the road to heaven was easy, then maybe anybody could do it. That's why there's few, you know. It's just like this. Was the road to the promised land easy? Was it going to be worthwhile? All the trials and tribulations and heartache and headache and all like that? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. So maybe we can see a shadow of this at how the church in the world operates today. There are obstacles we face. Are there enemies to the church? Yes, there is. Okay? Yes, sir.
Just like back at that time, only a few actually made it in, though. Just like today, only a few.
That is exactly correct, sir. You know, I can get off on a tangent on that few, but you're right. You know, there was at least several million people, if you go back and look at it, that came out of Egypt. And really, when you look at it, we know those of 20 years in age and above died in the wilderness. So that was a new group that had come along. Out of that original group of millions of people, Joshua and Caleb. Boy, that's few, isn't it? You know? Don't know how many people there was on the face of the earth at the flood, but you can go back there and do some calculations based on what we know about families and how they lived and the children they had. But I have seen estimates that there was probably 6 or 7 billion people on the face of the earth at that time. Now, that's not Bible, okay? That's what we're told. The whole point is there was a lot of people. That's why the flood was global, okay? Out of that, Daniel, if there wasn't but 1 million people on the face of the earth, 8 souls, how many is that? Few.
Well, if it was 50,000.
Huh?
Even if it was 50,000.
Oh, that's what I'm saying, yeah. Yeah, it's just like on the day of Pentecost there in Jerusalem. At that time, you know, that was a big deal. These Jews coming in there from everywhere, from throughout the then known world. And there's been estimates of over 1 million people there in Jerusalem for those, you know, for the festivities that went on there. And we know of 3,000 being baptized. Sounds like a lot, doesn't it? Daniel, huh? There was quite a few, wasn't it? Out of 1 million, though? I'm trying to do a statistical percentage real quick, like in my mind, but what is that, like 0.03% or something like that? Yeah, a whole lot less than 1%. Yeah. So, sir, you're right. I mean, the Bible is a Bible of few, the faithful few. You know, so when you look at it, you look at Sodom and Gomorrah, 4 got out, 1 looked back. So there was 3 of them. So yeah, you're right. You're right. There's few. And that's what the Bible teaches in this. So very good. So in summation, Moses sends messengers to the king of Edom asking for permission to pass through the land. Despite repeated pleas, the king of Edom refused as he shows up with a formal army. The Israelites turn away and do not engage in a confrontation at this time. So, that's kind of the summation of verses 14 through 21. Okay. The death of Aaron, verses 22 through 29. Eric, do you have that?
Now the children of Israel, the whole congregation journeyed from Kadesh and came to Mount Hor. And the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron in Mount Hor by the border of the land of Edom, saying, Aaron should be gathered to his people, for he shall not enter the land which I have given to the children of Israel, because he rebelled against my word at the water of Meribah. Take Aaron and Eleazar his son, and bring them up to Mount Hor, to strip Aaron of his garments and put them on Eleazar his son. For Aaron shall be gathered to his people and die there. So Moses did just as the Lord commanded, and they went up to Mount Hor in the sight of all the congregation. Moses stripped Aaron of his garments and put them on Eleazar his son, and Aaron died there on top of the mountain. Then Moses and Eleazar came down from the mountain. Now when all the congregation saw that Aaron was dead, all the house of Israel mourned for Aaron 30 days.
Okay, so we've already talked about, in the first part of this chapter, the death of Miriam, okay? We talked about Moses and Aaron being given instructions about speaking to the rock and not striking that rock, okay? And of course, Moses struck it. Well, therein right there, God had told both Moses and Aaron, you're not going over into the promised land. Now, we know from past studies, there was a whole lot more incidences involved than just this, okay? We're not going to go back through all that because it would take a while. I guess you could say they're on the verge of the promised land and didn't get to go in. Today, can that happen to us? Just like it did with Moses. Out of all that he had been through and all the times that he had interceded for the people to come right up to the edge and allow something not to let him in. Can we let that happen to us? Eric?
Does it look like when he went in the mountain, he was still alive?
I would think he was, because when they, you talking about Moses?
Aaron.
Oh, Aaron, yeah, it looks like he was when he was, huh?
Alive and was stripped.
Doing that?
It looks like to me like he was alive, taken up there, stripped of his.
Right, I agree with you.
Given to his son.
Right.
Kind of the last.
Yeah, I mean, he was stripped of his inheritance, so to speak, wasn't he? I mean, really, there's a whole lot to this when you look at it. I mean, here was Aaron in his priestly robes and stuff, no doubt. The congregation looking on. I mean, why would they be looking on? Would that be a kind of warning that here's what can happen for disobeying God? That you can be stripped of your righteousness and it be given to somebody else? Oh yeah, there's a lot in that, Eric, that went on up there on that mountain. It sure is. And, given to his son. Eleazar is going to become the high priest now over the children of Israel. So, we today, of course, we know today in the kingdom, we're all priests today. We don't have a high priest except Jesus Christ today, okay? We're all priests and kings in the kingdom. Can we allow an event in our journey to keep us out? It happens all the time, doesn't it? Something happens in the lives of people, whether it be some type of confrontation that goes on, whether it be discouragement to set in, whether it be whatever, okay? But a lot of times that happens, doesn't it? People be faithful years. I can look out here across this church building and think of it in its heyday when this place would be full of folks. And anyway, I can look right there down by where you sit, and I know who sat there, and I know the family that was there, and I know the events that went on, and they lost their faithfulness. They were pillars of this church right here. I can look over this way and tell you some stories, okay? It does happen. It's tragic, isn't it? But if we don't watch it, we can let the world, our opinion, and our attitude rob us of what? The promised land. Can happen. Sure can. And it's sad, isn't it? But it can happen. And it does happen. That's what's so tragic. So, there are a lot of lessons in this, a lot of types and shadows. You know, when we went through the book of Exodus and Leviticus, we really got into the types and shadows that exist in this. Maybe a shadow of this, Jeff, is you can be robbed if you hope. You know? And actually, who separated them? If you really want to look at it, who separated them? I know Moses. Greg, it's like this. Let me tell you about this. You manage to supervise people, you're going to learn about Excedrin headaches, right? By this time, Moses has been let them out of Egypt, been in the wilderness 40 years, and then people still grumbling, complaining, and growling, and whining, and seen all that God done. I imagine Moses was getting a little tired of it. What do you think? He didn't leave it with God. He took it on himself, didn't he? And there went the downfall. And that's what happens a lot of times. So we can talk about that. But anyway, we got the death of Aaron, verses 20 through 29. Aaron is going to pass away. Numbers chapter 20 is rich in a lot of things that went on, has there at the edge of beginning of the conquest, ending up their journey. God tells Moses and Aaron to go to Mount Hor. There Aaron will die, be gathered to his people, since he will not enter the promised land. Moses follows God's instructions, and in the presence of the entire community, Aaron dies on Mount Hor. Eric, there you are. In the presence. You know? God could have just took him up and just took care of it, one-on-one like that, transferred it over. Why do you think it was done open like that?
It's also kind of a formal ceremony showing Eleazar.
Yeah, that too. Yeah. But it's showing the transfer of power of the high priest, right? I agree with you. But also, what did it show? It showed the people, as great a man as Aaron was, he can be denied too, And the transfer of power was very important back then for them to see that, that the transformation now is being made from the Aaronic unto Eleazar, right? That was very important, that transfer of power. So that they could see that. Okay, what about the significance of all this? Let's talk about that for just a minute. I know we've done probably a pretty in-depth profile on Miriam, because we don't talk about her a lot in our Bible lessons along. So I did take some time to do a kind of a biography on her. Won't necessarily do that with Aaron, because in the course of our preaching and teaching, we talk a lot about Aaron, his role, his importance, his high priesthood, and all that kind of stuff. Aaron's death is significant for several reasons. First, it underscores the justice, the holiness and justice of God. Despite Aaron's prominent role and his close relationship with Moses, he was not exempt from the consequences of disobedience. The incident at Meribah, remember Meribah is where he struck the rock and got water. Moses and Aaron failed to uphold God's sanctity before the people, resulted in both leaders being barred from entering the promised land. What else does this teach us? Do leaders among people in general, are they held to a higher standard? Yeah. Are leaders in the church held to a higher standard than just the general laity? Not to say that the standard isn't there for them, but to a higher standard. Why? Why are they held to a higher standard? Because they're in the leadership role. They set the tone, like for the congregation, right? They set the tone for the teaching, okay? So it's very important that people in a leadership role, and I'm not just talking about elders, deacons, and preachers, I'm talking about song leaders. Very often we don't think about that. That's a leadership role in the church. What about those that head the table and wait on the table? Are they held to a higher standard? Yeah. Yes, sir.
I think about James 3:1, where it talks about teachers being held at a higher standard. They'll be judged with that stricter judgment.
Oh, yeah.
And I think a lot of it has to do with, they're supposed to know the Word of God and how to live it in their life. And I think that's a key role to it all.
Oh, yeah, it is. It is. That's why you have that leadership structure. That's why when elders and deacons are pronounced within the congregation, generally it comes from the congregation, the knowledge that people have, It's not something that's done in a closet. Greg?
Well, not only, back then, but now, people forget the basic definition of leader.
Go ahead.
You're out front leading. If you lead them astray, it's your responsibility, your fault, because you led them astray.
Right, right. And say, I wonder about the greater judgment, as this gentleman here, I can't remember your name, as this gentleman here brought up. The greater judgment, the weight of that judgment, in punishment, knowing that you had the power and authority to do the right thing and you didn't do it. Okay? You know, I think about a popular televangelist when, in my childhood, that we watched a lot on television. And sometimes, and I went back years ago and read some of his sermons and stuff like that. You know, he could teach some pretty good lessons to be a false teacher. There's no doubt. But get right up there at the end, have the football stadium captivated with his message, and fall them short of the cross. I want you to come down. I want you to have a word of prayer. Attend the church of your choice. Led them right on up to the cross of Jesus Christ and did what? Cut them off. Now, what kind of weight is that going to be in judgment? That's a lot to think about it here. It's going to be a heavy thought, isn't it? That I could have let them, but I cut them short for whatever reason. You know? Speaking about that, I remember years ago, quite younger, a long time ago before I met Peggy, I was a member of one of the larger Baptist churches there in Prattville, okay? And they had a meeting one night instead of having a Sunday night service, and was talking about deacons. And of course, the entire congregation, men and women, you actually don't vote in their particular surrounding, okay? Anyway, name come up, and I recognized the name. I know the guy. What he doing to be a deacon? He never even set foot in the building. So I've always been a little medicine and curiosity and all like that. So I went back and talked to one of the former deacons. I said, what are you doing here? I said, how did he get to be a deacon? I had never seen him around, knowed him well. He said, he had contributed $500 to the building fund, which back then was a lot of money, okay? And that, so we decided to make him a, what do you call it when you're a deacon in letter, so to speak, honorary deacon? And you know, I didn't know nothing about the church back then. I didn't know nothing about all this. But you know, that just didn't sound right, Reed. I mean, you know, I go ignorant country boy from West Watauga County, you know. All I knew is when it rained, the road got muddy, Daniel. That just didn't sound right. You ever run into something like that even today? Somebody be telling you something, you kind of like, it don't sound right. You don't know for sure, but it just don't fit, okay? Well, that just didn't fit. So, yeah, all kinds of things. So, you held to a high standard? Yeah, there's no doubt. Yeah. I'm watching that clock there because I got to read the first lesson. Secondly, Aaron's death and transfer of his priestly garments to Eleazar symbolized the continuity of the priesthood, continuity of the priesthood. The priesthood was a divine institution meant to endure through generations, and this orderly transition ensured that the spiritual leadership of Israel remained intact. And I think we didn't say it exactly like that, but we touched on it all around the edges. Lastly, Aaron's death served as a public reminder to the Israelites of their mortality and importance of faithfulness to God. The mourning of the entire congregation for 30 days reflects a deep respect and affection the people had for Aaron, as well as the gravity of losing a leader who had been instrumental in their journey from slavery to the brink of the promised land. So he was a very significant character in the history of Israel, wasn't he? In summary, the death of Aaron is a moment of both loss and transition for the Israelites, marking the end of an era and the continuation of God's plan for his people. Okay, and that's the end of Numbers chapter 20. Do any of you brethren have any comments on that? And I'm going to kind of jump over into Numbers chapter 21 and just briefly, because we know we're running out of time, and we'll kind of pick up there. But Numbers chapter 21. Numbers 21. So what's the conversation in Numbers chapter 21 going to look like? The fiery serpents. We know the story of the fiery serpents that was set upon the people for punishment. But do we know a lot about the detail of that? Do we really know a lot about that account? So we're going to look at the fiery serpents. What about now being bit by the fiery serpent, and then you turn around and you're healed by the fiery serpent? Seems kind of strange, doesn't it? But the fiery serpent you're healed by was different than the serpent you were bitten by. It had been purged by fire because it was made of bronze. There's a whole story into that, okay? And more on the conquest that's going to take place here. The bronze serpent. Numbers 21 beautifully captures the dynamic relationship between the Israelites, Moses, and God. Even in their doubts and disobedience, God's faithfulness never wanes. When they face challenges, God delivers them, reinforcing the concept that faith and obedience are often met with divine intervention. As modern-day believers, this chapter encourages us to navigate through our wilderness through faith, through patience, and courage to confront the obstacles of our path. So that statement there is very relevant to today, isn't it? That's what this is a lesson on. You remember, these things are written of old for our learning, that we through patience might have hope. So why do we have all this? Well, you know, it's our guide. It's to help us. It's words of encouragement. There's a lot we can learn from what went on with those people. A lot we can learn on what to do, but also, Isaac, what not to do. Okay? And it seems as though we get more bogged down a lot of times on what not to do than what to do. You know, it's kind of like a lot of things and lessons and things that go on in the church. I sometimes wonder if we spend too much time on certain topics, but we ought to be encouraging people not to get involved in those things. No, I'll just throw it out there. The divorce and remarry issue. We spend tons of time going up one side and down the other, maybe trying to justify something when we ought to be spending more time encouraging people to do what? Stay married. That's your mate. That's who you chose. Stay married. Maybe we need to spend more time on that, you know, to encourage instead of trying to find something that we're looking for that in reality may not be there, okay? I'm going to have to stop right there. We've got to get ready for the worship service, and we'll pick up here next week.